Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing these 3 200-watt solar blankets. Now I think we'll start this video by talking about each blanket, where they've come from, what their claimed power outages are, and just a few specifications, size, weight, and all that kind of thing. Also, before we get into this, I just want to make a disclaimer as well. I'm not a doctor, an engineer, an electrical auto sparky. I'm just me. I'm a gas fitter. I'm not someone that knows everything about these. I just know enough to get myself into trouble. If I do something wrong, feel free to comment and say exactly what we would have done, but I'm going to give each 3 blankets as fair run as I can with as many different tests as I can. So let's get into it, hey? Now the first blanket I want to start with here is the Kings. Now it's looking a little bit worse for wear. I've owned this for about 9 months now. I haven't had any problems with it. Just a few damages or whatever there, but we'll get back to it. So this one comes in at the lightest, being 5.8 kilos, and also the smallest. So it's about 480 mils wide, 420 mils high, and I think it's about 30 mil thick, sort of thing. It's obviously going to be even thicker, more like 60, 70 mil with this at the front here. It also comes with this, which is the Kings MPPT controller. Now, if you know a little bit about solar, there's 2 different kinds of controllers you can get. So you can get MPPT or PWM. MPPT stands for, don't hold me to this, but I think it's multiple power point tracking, and it's pretty much known to be a lot more efficient than a PWM controller. We will test this though, because the other blankets do not come with an MPPT controller. They have PWMs. So a bit of a different strategy by Kings. Now second in the gates is this iTechWorld 200-watt Raptor skin panel. So this one's a little bit bigger. It is 590 wide by 550 high, and it weighs in at about 7.5 kilos. So it is a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger. I'd say it'd be a little bit thinner, just the way that it's designed. Also, the controller that it comes with is this one here. It's a PWM controller. Again, we just touched on this. We'll see how it compares in the test. Now, third one for the test is this HARDKORR 200-watt blanket. This isn't my blanket. It's been lent to me by a good friend who was really interested in this test to see whether his HARDKORR blanket would compare against the other 2. This one is a lot bigger. It's about 10 kilos, so it's an extra 2.5 kilos. It's almost double the Kings. It's a lot wider. It's 730 mil wide and 530 mil high. It is thinner, as we can see. That's without your pouch where you would keep your cables and all that kind of stuff. But it does come with this really nice bag that you can zip it up in. Everything can be protected. You keep your cables and your regulator and all that kind of stuff in there. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a regulator for this one. My friend who owned it didn't need one. He just plugs it into his caravan, just straight through his solar regulator that he already has. You can purchase them with or without. I do know that they have a really nice style PWM one, but we're going to give each blanket a fair test by putting them all through the same regulator so that we can actually figure out not which blanket regulator combo is the best, but also which blanket itself is the best, because a lot of people like me aren't actually using the regulator. They're using their one that's built into their van or their car, just how it is. Alright, so to sum that up, I guess we'll call this test the portability test. Just which blanket is the easiest to live with, you know, the lightest and the smallest. The Kings comes out on top with this one being the lightest and the smallest. It's easier to fit into small spaces. Pretty much if you're looking for a blanket, you probably do a bit of touring, four-wheel driving, caravanning, that kind of thing. You're always looking for something that is the lightest, and Kings really takes it here. So we'll give the Kings 4 points. The iTech blanket is not much bigger, doesn't weigh much more. It's a pretty good size. It's really thin. There's not many places the Kings is gonna fit that's not gonna fit. We'll probably just give that a 3, just a good average, because it is the average, hey. And the HARDKORR will end up giving that a 2 just because of its sheer size. It's double the weight of the Kings. Now for the next test, we'll talk setup. So which blanket is the easiest to set up? This is the King's blanket. Rip this top, opens up, lay it out in the sun, and that's it. Now the thing is with the Kings is that it doesn't, like the other blankets, have legs so you can stand it up. But it does have these sort of handy little tabs here if you wanted to string it up. I mean, we could hang it from our car here somewhere to try and get a bit of sun. You could always prop it up or do something like that. Not having legs, for certain people, if you've got the setup, put it on your windscreen, could work for you. For others, where you really want to be laying it on the ground, it's not going to work for you. All in all, it's actually pretty easy to set up. So here's the iTech one. Now, this confused me a little bit at first how to set it up, but I think I've actually got it pretty down pat. So you basically just sit it on its side here, like so. Flip your leg out, undo these, grab this leg, fold it round. It really confused me at the start, but now it makes sense. And then when you're packing it up, it's just the same way. So it's actually pretty easy. So here's the HARDKORR. It's pretty much the same blanket as the iTech. So same setup. This down. And we're out. And we're back. Now with this setup thing, it is quite hard to say which one's better. The iTech and the HARDKORR are basically the same blanket. The HARDKORR is a little bit bigger, meaning that it's a bit heavier and harder to set up, but they're both super easy. The Kings itself is really easy to set up. It's just, like I showed you, you just pull it and it's open. And for most people, you're just laying it on the ground. It's even easier than having to prop the legs up. Yes, you don't have to use the legs on the other ones, but Kings doesn't have the leg. It's a bit of a what your setup is. If you've got somewhere to hang the Kings, a couple of little hooks on caravans, I've seen them, but if you're going to be setting it up out the front of your caravan, on the grass, trying to pick up the most sun, the HARDKORR and the iTechWorld are better. And for most people, that's probably better. So for design and setup, I'm going to give the HARDKORR a 4, the iTech a 4, and the Kings a 3. Because I think that having that extra, those little legs on the back is a really good little thing. Okay, we now have all the panels set up on the ground, out in the sun, ready for us to start testing. But before we actually get into the testing, I know you're waiting for it, I just want to talk about their durability. I just want to show you a bit of a closer look at each panel so that you can see what they're made of and the quality of them. So like I've said, I've owned this Kings panel for about 9 months, and you can see that it's starting to get these scratches on the panel here. And then also, as I've shown you before, this has broken away. I've tried to put some tape on it there to try and make it, you know, a bit better trying to hold this cord in, but yeah, it's really failed through here. All this stitching is pretty poor, which is quite disappointing, but it's King stuff. You sort of get what you pay for. Moving across to this HARDKORR panel. This HARDKORR panel is the same age and has pretty much the same use as this Kings panel. And as you can see, it has fared a lot better. Now HARDKORR have what they call this croc skin on it. At first I thought that the croc skin and the raptor skin that's on the iTech were very similar. The croc skin is like a bit softer. I don't know, I wish we had Filo vision on here, hey. But yeah, it is, but it seems that it doesn't take any scratches like the Kings does. Being that when these panels are folded on each other, if you get any bit of dirt, they just rub together and it really takes this clear coat off. Whereas with this croc skin stuff on there, it's super durable. Now the iTech one here, This has their new Raptor skin, and it's sort of soft as well, but it's a lot harder than the Croc skin. It's hard to see actually that they're different, but they are a different product. The iTech actually seems to be built super strong. I've only had it about 3 weeks and I've used it almost every day for the last 3 weeks. The build quality so far seems fantastic. Really good sort of setup, like just the way the legs are, and this pouch up the end here is really nice. Concluding this durability test, basically, I would like to say that the Kings is sadly last. It comes in at a 2 for durability, just because it's just not made well, unfortunately. Poor old Kings, but I don't know, it's something that you come to expect. But we'll see how it's lasting in the power test. I will give it the benefit of the doubt, and I will, you know, take into factor that the iTech is new, the HARDKOR is old. The HARDKOR, I don't mind. It's hard to see on camera the actual difference. It's not as robust, feels as strong, and the material's not as thick as the iTech one. It's just a bit thinner, which is strange in it being a lot more heavier than the other panels. I thought that the material would feel a bit more quality and thicker, but the iTech, it feels amazing and in your hands. I don't know. So we'll give the HARDKOR a 4 and the iTech a 4.5. Now for this test, we're going to be using one regulator just to start with, and just use the same regulator on each panel so that we've got, you know, just a bit of a baseline, I think you would say. And I'm going to use the same extension cable on each panel as well, just to give each panel an even chance to show how many amps they can bring in. Now, please don't expect these numbers from your panels. Right now we're in Darwin. It's about 33, 34 degrees. It is June. So if you've ever been to Darwin and used solar, you'll know that it doesn't work as well as it would in like southern states. For example, my two 150 watt panels that I have on the roof of the caravan, usually down south I could get 24, 25 amps out of them. But at the moment, they're probably getting about, peak sun, probably 14. You'd be like, what? But yeah, it's actually happening, and it's not just me. I'm asking everyone at this hip camp that I'm at. No one is in the unpowered section. There's us and the other guys that own this HARDKOR panel, and everyone else around is on powered. Yeah, I thought I'd just chuck that in there guys. So don't expect that you'll get this low amount of amps from your blankets. You'll probably get a lot more. So here's our setup. We're going to just be using the iTech regulator as our regulator that we use for all of them, so that it's a fair game. This iTech regulator here is running into this power monitor. I will say I'm going to run all the blankets on their backs first to give them all a fair chance against the Kings before we lift the other two up and put them on their legs and point them more towards the sun. It's about 12:30. The sun's as high as it gets here in Darwin. The Kings has the best chance right now being on its back. We might also lift it up and see how it does as well. For the Kings here, laying on its back, we are getting 3.3 amps, 43.6 watts at 13.2 volts. You probably think that's quite poor. So again, I'd just like to say that you'll see with all these other blankets, you don't get much sun up here in winter in Darwin. We'll move on to the HARDKOR and we'll see how we go. So we've laid the HARDKOR down here on its back so that it's similar to the Kings. I'll move it a little bit out of this shadow here, hey? Again, plugged into the iTech regulator and then plugged into this power meter. We'll see how much we've got. 3.9 amps, 51.5 watts. The HARDKOR is sitting up on its legs. A lot of people say it helps dissipate the heat because you can get a bit of airflow behind it. Whether that's right or wrong, I can't say. Maybe, but let's have a look. Look at that. 4.8 amps, 64.3 watts. That is actually quite a big improvement, isn't it? Just from lifting it up. Last but not least, we have the iTechWorld blanket. This blanket is brand new, but The other blankets are still in relatively good condition and it shouldn't really affect them, but we'll have a look, hey? Same again, iTech controller there. We'll have a look. Right away, 9.2 amps, 127 watts. Now that is a massive difference. Now these are still in these, they're facing the exact same way, in the same sun. That's pretty crazy. I'll just knock this iTech one down on its back and we'll see how much it loses, but it's already a lot more than the other panels. Okay, iTech flat on its back. iTech controller. 7.2 amps, 97.9 watts. So on its back, it's making more than the HARDKOR when it's standing up towards the sun. Now, I'd like to also say that the HARDKOR panel is a lot bigger than the iTech. You think bigger, meaning they can probably get more sun, but yeah, it doesn't, does it? Okay, for this last test, I'm going to swap this controller, this PWM controller that we've been using for this King's MPPT that we've got. Supposedly a much more efficient way to bring in your solar. And then we'll check the amps and see if it makes any difference. So before we take it off, we've got 9.2 amps there. Okay, we now have the King's controller plugged in. 9.2 amps again. Very similar. Now, MPPT controllers are better overall. I'm not going to get into exactly why. They work better in lower heat conditions and when your panels are like in partial shade and things like that. I'm not the right person to talk about this. I'm sure there's 100 other YouTube videos that can tell you exactly why they're better. Right now in this situation, there was no difference. Maybe in the future when we're down south and it's a bit colder, I might whack them over and do a bit of a test and see if there's any difference, and I'll put it up on YouTube in one of our videos. So subscribe and you'll have to watch all of our videos just to see if it comes up. But as one last test, I'd like to try and prop the Kings up in more of an angle of the sun, a similar direction as these other two blankets that are getting propped up, to see if it gives it any better power. Okay, I've propped the King's panel up here just on some chairs, so it's a pretty similar angle to the other panels. King's regulator plugged in. It's giving us 3.7 amps right there. 3.8. A little bit of a difference, not a whole heap. Not even half of what the iTech one's bringing in. Now to finish up on that power one and give them a rating, the iTech panel really knocked him out of the park. It's got to be a 5 for iTech there. It is literally double the King's. Well, almost double the HARDKOR as well, which is crazy. The King's one didn't do too well. Obviously it does lack that bit standing up. We did put it on angle. Unfortunately, power wise, the King's I've got to give a 2, and the HARDKOR probably 2.5, because yeah, 2.5, half a 5. I mean, the iTech literally doubled that power. So yeah, I really thought that the HARDKOR and the iTech would be on par and the Kings would be really far behind. I didn't expect much from the Kings. Actually seeing how far ahead the iTech is, it's insane. We'll get on to the last bit, which is price. Now, here we are with the price. I've seen a few other reviews. I've seen the King's panel reviewed and compared to other products like the Red Arc and things. Now, those blankets are super expensive and they're sort of out of anyone's price range. Really, I find these 3 panels are the ones that if you're looking to buy a solar panel, these are the ones that you're gonna be looking at. These are in the budget. Obviously, some of them are a bit more expensive, but most of the time you're probably hoping if I just pay that little bit more, I'll get a little bit better quality and it will bring me a bit more power, last me a bit longer. That might not be the case. It's June 10th today. These are the prices that I could find online right now. when you're watching this video, they might not be the same. These are the prices that I looked up this morning and what they were. For the Kings, with an MPPT controller, is $243 on sale today, on June the 10th. So that's cheap. That's super cheap. I think when I bought it, I think it was about $289. I think I paid for that. Like Kings, they always go on sale. Also like to say a big shout out to Kings. They've made four-wheel driving what it is today, just with their cheap gear. For people that can't afford all the gear and being able to go to places like ARB, get all the Red Arc gear and all that kind of stuff, they've given them a chance to actually get out and enjoy four-wheel driving. And it's great to have the community bigger. The camping and four-wheel driving community is going gangbusters at the moment. It's bigger. You see four-wheel drives everywhere. You didn't see it 10 years ago. And I think Kings has a big part to thank for it. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Kings. The second panel, the iTech panel. So right now today you can get that iTech panel that I've got for $4.99. So yes, it is double the price of the Kings, but it is also more than double the power of the Kings. So much more robust. It's just a better product than that. I understand that it is double the price, but with almost every iTech product that I've seen, they seem to be, how do I explain it, underselling and overperforming. So for example, it's like that panel is a 300 watt panel, but they just write 200 watt on it just so that it blows it out of the park. I know we've got iTech batteries as well, and same thing, we've got the iTech 120X Pros, and they're supposed to be 120 amp, yet people test them to 136 amps. I've seen them do online. Whereas some batteries you see, they might claim to be 100 amps, but they only actually produce about 80. It's a real theme with the iTech stuff. It's super quality stuff for a really affordable price. It is, yeah, pretty amazing. Now, last but not least, the HARDKOR. I've got that for sale today, 10th of June, $729 with a PWM controller. So yeah, it's another 50% price on top of the iTech with half the power. It's bigger, it's heavier. I will say we don't have the regulator here, but the regulator that they sell does show amps coming in, which, I mean, you don't need to have, but it's something that's quite interesting. For me, I really enjoy looking at all that kind of stuff. I want to see where I can place my solar panels so that I'm making the most power. So that is quite handy, which you're not offered with the Kings or the iTech. But for an extra $250, an extra 2.5 kilos, and the panel being even bigger, it's, well, you can decide yourself. Yeah, I haven't really dealt with many of the HARDKOR products before. I'm sure the rest of their stuff is fantastic. I can't say anything against it. But I will say that the owner of the panel is quite disappointed. So I guess we'd probably want to finish off with my take on which one I think the best value for money is, which is of course the iTech. I mean, it's smashed it out of the park. The Kings I think is a fantastic panel. If that's all you can afford and that's what you need, get it. It works. It does the job. But if you're someone that is doing what I am, living on the road and needing solar, you need to spend that extra money and get the iTech. It's just sensible. Like, you could buy two Kings for the same price, but you still would not get as much power out of one iTech. It's pretty much, you know, a straight shot for me. Kings second. It's good product. HARDKOR is a disappointing third. It's a shame. I don't really like to talk bad stuff on products, but I mean, we put it to the test. I mean, if HARDKOR want to send me one, to a new one or something to test, I mean, be my guest, I'll do it again. But the one that I was provided with today, in excellent condition, did not live up to its standards. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys got something out of this video today. please give us a like and subscribe. If you like my hat, you might be able to purchase it online really soon if you just go to the link in the description. It's a new bogged hat. I really like it. Hey guys, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to edit this video and get it out to you, as obviously you've seen in the video I've said it was June the 10th. And now I've realized it's not end of financial year and some of these prices have gone up. But if you want to purchase that iTech blanket, I know it's on sale now for about 600 bucks, but if you use this code here, you can get yourself an extra 5% off, which at least brings it down another 30 bucks. And that's everything else in the store. So even if anything's on sale, it brings it down. So that's a pretty good little code to get 5% off. Yeah, that's the blanket I buy. So I hope you like the video, guys, and hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. Cheers.